The training camp fell silent. Muhammad Ali, the most famous athlete in the world, was on his knees crying like a child. In his massive hands, he held something that would change the course of boxing history. A simple Polaroid photograph of a dying 8-year-old boy named Billy. What happened in those final weeks before the greatest upset in sports would prove that some victories happen long before you step into the ring. This isn't just another Muhammad Ali story. This isn't about trash talk or rope-a-dope strategy. This is about the moment when the most confident man in the world discovered what real courage looks like, and it came from someone who weighed less than 60 pounds and had weeks to live. It was summer 1974 and everyone said Muhammad Ali was finished. The newspapers called him a faded has-been. Sports Illustrated ran a cover asking if Ali had lost his mind taking this fight. At 32 they called him too old, too slow, too damaged from his 3-year exile for refusing to fight in Vietnam. George Foreman was waiting for him in Zaire, younger, stronger, undefeated, and absolutely terrifying. The numbers told the brutal truth. Foreman had demolished Joe Frazier, the man who'd beaten Ali, in just 2 rounds. He'd crushed Ken Norton like he was a sparring partner. In his last 8 fights, Foreman had scored 8 knockouts. The smart money wasn't just betting against Ali, they were betting he wouldn't survive past the 5th round. Vegas oddsmakers had Foreman as a 4-1 favorite. Boxing experts weren't discussing if Ali would lose, but how badly he'd be hurt. Some doctors publicly questioned whether the fight should even be allowed to happen. But Ali wasn't training for George Foreman anymore. He was training for Billy, and nobody, not his trainers, not the press, not even his closest friends, understood what that meant until it was almost too late. The boy had arrived on a sweltering July afternoon at Ali's camp in Deer Lake, Pennsylvania. The drive from Ohio had taken 8 hours because they'd had to stop every hour for Billy to rest. His father, Thomas Williams, a factory worker from Akron, had spent his family's entire savings on gas money in a cheap motel room. He had one desperate hope. Maybe the champion could give his dying son a moment of happiness before the end came. Thomas had tried everything. Specialists at Cleveland Clinic. Experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. He'd sold his car, taken a second mortgage on his house, and worked double shifts at the steel mill. Nothing had worked. The leukemia was too aggressive, too advanced. The doctors had stopped using words like treatment and started talking about making him comfortable. That's when Billy, weak and getting weaker, had made his own request. Not for toys or trips or anything a normal 8-year-old might want. He wanted to meet Muhammad Ali. "Daddy," Billy had whispered from his hospital bed, "if I'm gonna die, can I meet the greatest fighter ever first?" Thomas Williams had written letter after letter to Ali's management. He'd called every phone number he could find. He'd even shown up at a press conference in Cleveland, only to be turned away by security. But somehow through a friend of a friend who knew someone who worked at the camp, the message had reached Ali's inner circle. Gene Kilroy, Ali's business manager, had been the one to approve the visit. He'd seen the desperation in the father's letter, the raw pain of a man watching his child slip away. Kilroy had lost his own son in Vietnam 2 years earlier. He understood that kind of grief. Billy was 8 years old and completely bald from chemotherapy. His baseball cap, a Cleveland Indians fitted hat that was now too big for his shrunken head, kept sliding down over his eyes. The cancer had taken everything: his hair, his energy, his appetite, his future. But somehow, impossibly, it hadn't taken his smile. When Ali first saw him walking slowly across the training camp, one small hand clutching his father's, the other holding onto an IV pole that the doctors had insisted he keep with him, something cracked inside the champion's chest. This wasn't supposed to happen to children. Ali had seen violence, had absorbed punishment that would have hospitalized ordinary men, had been threatened by the FB and the mob. But this, watching a child fight for his life, this was different. This was a kind of cruelty that made no sense. "Mr. Ali," Thomas Williams said, his voice already breaking as he removed his own worn baseball cap, "this is my son Billy. He's got cancer. Real bad. The doctors say he doesn't have long, maybe 2 weeks if we're lucky. He's been following your career since he was 5. Talks about you all the time. I know you're busy preparing for the big fight, and I know this is an imposition, but if you could just shake his hand, maybe say hello." What happened next would haunt Ali for the rest of his life, but not in the way you might think. Instead of offering empty comfort or celebrity small talk, Instead of a quick handshake and photo opportunity that would have satisfied most people, Ali did something completely unexpected. Something that revealed the man behind the legend. He immediately knelt down. Not halfway, not in a crouch that still kept him above Billy's eye level, but all the way down on both knees in the Pennsylvania dirt, getting his training shorts dirty, making himself smaller so Billy wouldn't have to crane his neck to look up. The entire training camp stopped what they were doing. Sparring partners put down their gloves. Trainers stopped wrapping hands. The media that had been following Ali around all day suddenly fell silent. Everyone sensed they were witnessing something sacred. Billy. Ali said, and his voice had changed. Gone was the bombast, the theatrical confidence, though I am the greatest, bravado that defined Muhammad Ali in public. This was different. This was gentle. This was real. It's an honor to meet you. Billy, who had been clutching his father's hand so tightly his knuckles were white, slowly let go and extended his own tiny hand. It was pale and thin, with a hospital bracelet still attached to his wrist. When Ali took it, he was shocked by how fragile it felt, like bird bones wrapped in tissue paper. Why are you wearing that hat on such a hot day? Ali asked gently, his voice full of genuine curiosity rather than pity. Billy hesitated, looking up at his father for permission. Thomas Williams nodded encouragingly, tears already forming in his eyes because he knew what was coming. Billy slowly removed his cap. The chemotherapy had taken everything, not just hair, but eyebrows, eyelashes. His scalp was pale white with a few dark spots where the IV needles had left marks. He looked up at Ali with eyes that seemed too old for his face, eyes that had seen too much pain for any child to bear. I got cancer, Billy said simply with the matter-of-fact honesty that only children possess. Real bad cancer. The doctors say I only got a few weeks, maybe less. For a moment, nobody spoke. The silence stretched on, filled only by the distant sound of a heavy bag being worked in the gym and the soft hum of insects in the Pennsylvania heat. Ali looked at this innocent child who should have been playing Little League baseball or riding his bicycle or doing any of the 1,000 things that 8-year-old boys do in summer. Instead, he was here, dying, making what might be his last happy memory. Then Ali did what came naturally to him, what his mother had taught him to do when he encountered suffering. He opened his arms wide. Come here, Billy. Billy stepped forward and Ali pulled him into a hug, not a quick, perfunctory embrace but a real hug. The kind that says, you matter, you're important, you're seen, you're loved. Gene Kilroy, who had been standing a respectful distance away, instinctively reached for his Polaroid camera. Something told him this moment needed to be captured, that it was important in a way that transcended sports or celebrity, or anything he'd witnessed in 20 years of working with athletes. The image he captured would become one of the most powerful photographs ever taken of Muhammad Ali, though almost nobody would see it for decades. In the photo, Ali is kneeling on the ground, his massive 6'3" frame folded down to child height, his muscular arms wrapped gently around a tiny bald boy. Billy's face is buried in Ali's shoulder. Ali's eyes are closed, and you can see on his face something rare for a man who made his living projecting strength and invincibility, vulnerability, tenderness, a grief so deep it transcended words. They stood like that for what felt like forever, but was probably only a minute or two. Billy buried his face deeper into Ali's shoulder, breathing in the smell of boxing gloves and sweat and something else, safety, maybe, or hope. Ali just held him, one massive hand cradling the back of Billy's head where hair used to be, the other arm wrapped protectively around the child's fragile body. Around them, the camp had gone completely quiet. The other boxers, the trainers, the hangers on who were always at training camp, everyone had stopped what they were doing to watch this moment. Several people were crying. Even the toughest guys in the camp, men who'd seen every kind of violence the boxing ring could offer, were wiping their eyes. Billy's father had turned completely away now, his broad shoulders shaking as he sobbed quietly, overwhelmed by the kindness this famous man was showing his dying son. He'd expected a handshake, maybe an autograph. He hadn't expected this genuine compassion from someone who owed them nothing. When they finally separated, Ali kept his hands on Billy's shoulders, his grip firm but gentle, and looked directly into the boy's eyes with an intensity that made everyone watching hold their breath. Billy, you know what I'm about to do. The boy nodded weakly. You're gonna fight George Foreman. That's right. And you know what everyone says about that fight? Billy's voice was barely a whisper. They say you're gonna lose. Ali's eyes blazed with sudden intensity. They say I'm too old. They say Foreman hits too hard. They say I should quit before I embarrass myself. But you know what I know? What? When Muhammad Ali decides something, really decides it in his heart, it happens. I have decided I'm going to beat George Foreman. Not because it's easy. Not because people believe in me. But because I decided it. Then Ali leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Billy, I'm going to make you a promise. And I need you to make me a promise back. Gene Kilroy, Ali's business manager, grabbed his Polaroid camera. Something told him this moment needed to be captured. Here's my promise. Ali continued, his hands resting gently on Billy's frail shoulders. I'm going to beat George Foreman. I'm going to win that fight for you. But here's what I need you to promise me. Billy leaned forward, hanging on every word. You're going to beat cancer. Not try to beat it. Beat it. You're going to fight this disease the exact same way I'm going to fight George Foreman. You understand me? Tears started streaming down Billy's cheeks. Yes. I can't hear you, Ali said, but he was smiling now. Yes, Billy said louder. Still can't hear you? Yes, Billy shouted, and everyone in the training camp started clapping and cheering. Ali pulled the boy into a hug that lasted forever and not nearly long enough. Kilroy snapped the photo that would become the most important picture in Muhammad Ali's collection. In it, you can see the heavyweight champion of the world, this giant of a man, cradling a dying child like he was holding the most precious thing on earth. Now say it, Ali whispered in Billy's ear. Say you're going to beat cancer. I'm going to beat cancer, Billy said firmly. Louder, like you're the champion. I'm going to beat cancer! That's right, we're both winners, Billy, both champions. As Billy and his father drove away that afternoon, something fundamental had shifted in Muhammad Ali's approach to the biggest fight of his life. He made a decision that would define not just the next 3 months of training, but the kind of man he wanted to be. He took that Polaroid photograph, that image of himself holding a dying child, and tacked it right next to the mirror where he shadow boxed every morning. Not hidden away in a drawer or tucked into a scrapbook, but prominently displayed where he would see it dozens of times every day. The photograph became his ritual, his prayer, his reminder of what real courage looked like. Every morning at 5 a.m., before the roadwork through the Pennsylvania mountains, Ali would stand in front of that mirror and touch Billy's photograph. He would look at that small, brave face and say quietly, "Good morning, champ. Let's get to work." Before every brutal training session, and they were brutal, more punishing than anything Ali had ever put himself through, he would touch that photo. When younger sparring partners got the better of him, when his legs felt heavy, when his reflexes seemed a split second slower than they used to be, when the press was writing him off as a has-been, when the fear whispered in his ear that maybe everyone was right, maybe he was too old, he would stop what he was doing and stare at Billy's face. That little boy is fighting cancer right now, he would tell himself, sweat dripping onto the canvas floor. He's in pain. He's scared. But he made me a promise. He said he's going to beat cancer. How can I, Muhammad Ali, complain about being tired when that boy isn't quitting? How can I give anything less than everything when Billy is giving everything he is just to stay alive another day? Angelo Dundee, Ali's trainer, had never seen anything like it. Ali trained like a man possessed. Dundee later said, like every punch was for someone who couldn't throw punches anymore. The other fighters in camp noticed it too. Ernie Shavers, who was helping Ali prepare for Foreman's devastating power, said Ali's intensity was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The man was training like his life depended on it. But it wasn't about his life, it was about keeping his word to that little boy. Ali's routine became legendary in those final weeks. He would wake up before dawn, touch Billy's photo, then run 6 miles through the mountain trails. Then came breakfast, just fruit and oatmeal, nothing that would slow him down. By 9 a.m., he was in the gym. 15 rounds of heavy bag work, speed bag for coordination, double end bag for timing. Then came the sparring, not the light technical sessions that aging fighters usually preferred, but full contact wars with fresh opponents. Ali would go 4 rounds with one partner, then immediately face another fresh fighter for 4 more rounds, then a third opponent for another 4. By the end, he was facing 12 rounds against men who weren't tired while he was exhausted. Between rounds, during the brief rest periods, Ali would glance over at Billy's photograph. The image gave him strength when his body wanted to quit. when his muscles screamed for mercy, when his lungs burned from exertion, when every instinct told him to take it easy, he would think about Billy lying in a hospital bed somewhere, fighting a battle far harder than anything Ali would ever face in any boxing ring. For weeks, Ali carried Billy with him everywhere. The photograph became his talisman, his motivation, his reminder of what real courage looked like. Word spread through the boxing world about Ali's obsessive preparation. Reporters who visited the camp wrote about the almost frightening intensity of his training. But Ali never told anyone about Billy. The photograph remained his private inspiration, his secret source of strength. To the outside world, he was still the same brash, confident Muhammad Ali. Privately, though, he was carrying the hopes of a dying child into every training session, every sparring round, every moment of preparation for the biggest fight of his life. October 30, 1974, Kinshasa, Zaire, 400 am local time. The stadium was a cauldron of noise and energy. 60,000 Africans packed into the Stade du 20 Mai, chanting, Ali, Bomé, Kali, kill him! The entire world was watching on closed-circuit television and delayed broadcasts. Presidents and kings had flown in to witness what many believed would be Muhammad Ali's final fight. In the locker room, as his hands were being wrapped, Ali touched Billy's photograph one last time. He'd carried it with him across the Atlantic Ocean, through weeks of preparation in Zaire, through the chaos and carnival atmosphere that had surrounded this fight. Now, in the final moments before the biggest challenge of his career, he drew strength from the memory of a dying child's courage. Muhammad Ali stood across the ring from George Foreman, the most devastating puncher in heavyweight history. Foreman looked like a force of nature, 6'4", 220 pounds of muscle, undefeated in 40 fights with 37 knockouts. His punches didn't just hurt opponents, they ended careers. He'd destroyed Joe Frazier, the man who'd beaten Ali, in just 2 rounds. He'd crushed Ken Norton in 2 rounds. Most experts weren't just predicting Foreman would win, they were worried Ali might not survive. The arena held 60,000 screaming fans, but Ali wasn't thinking about any of that. He wasn't thinking about the millions of dollars at stake, the championship belt, or even his place in boxing history. He was thinking about a promise he'd made to a dying boy. For 7 grueling rounds, Ali absorbed Foreman's punishment using a strategy no one expected. Instead of dancing and moving as everyone anticipated, he leaned against the ropes, covering up, protecting himself while the younger man unleashed everything he had. It looked like suicide. Round after round, Foreman threw bombs, massive hooks, devastating uppercuts, body shots that would have dropped most fighters. The crowd gasped with each thunderous combination. Ali's corner shouted for him to get off the ropes. Television commentators predicted the end was coming any moment. But Ali had a plan that went beyond boxing strategy. He was teaching Foreman the same lesson that Billy had taught him, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is endure. With each punch Foreman threw, Ali whispered under his breath, "For Billy, for Billy, for Billy." He absorbed punishment that would have broken other men. His body took shots that sent shockwaves through the crowd. But Ali endured, protected himself, and most importantly, he remembered his promise. Every time he wanted to quit, every time the pain became almost unbearable, he thought about Billy lying in a hospital bed in Ohio, watching this fight, believing in him. Then, in the 8th round, something magical happened. Foreman's arms grew heavy. His legs tired. His punches, which had been crisp and violent for 7 rounds, became slower, less accurate. And Ali saw his moment. He came off the ropes like a man reborn and unleashed a 5-punch combination that sent George Foreman, the most feared heavyweight in the world, crashing to the canvas. The arena exploded. The referee began his count. Foreman tried to get up, struggled to his feet at 7, but he was finished. At the count of 10, the fight was over. Muhammad Ali, at 32 years old, against all odds, was heavyweight champion of the world once again. He'd done what everyone said was impossible. He'd reclaimed his throne through sheer will and the power of a promise kept. In the chaos that followed, 60,000 Africans chanting his name, reporters swarming the ring, his corner lifting him on their shoulders, flash bulbs exploding like fireworks. Ali's first coherent thought wasn't about his victory or his vindication or his place in history. His first thought was about Billy. "I did it," Ali whispered to himself in the madness of victory. "Billy, I did it. I kept my promise." A week later, Gene Kilroy received the phone call that shattered his heart and changed how he understood the true meaning of victory. "Mr. Kilroy." The voice on the other end was Thomas Williams, Billy's father. But he sounded different now, older, broken, like something fundamental had died inside him. "This is Tom Williams, Billy's dad. We met at your training camp in July." Kilroy's stomach dropped. He knew what was coming before the man said another word. "Billy passed away yesterday morning," Thomas said, his voice cracking. "But I need you to know something. I need you to tell Miss Allie something for me." Kilroy closed his eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "I'm so sorry, Tom. I'm so damn sorry." Billy watched the fight from his hospital room. Thomas continued through tears. They set up a television right next to his bed. The nurses, the doctors, everyone gathered around to watch with him. When Mr. Ali won, when Foreman went down, Billy was so happy. Despite all his pain, despite how sick he was, he kept saying, "I did it! He did it! Ali kept his promise! Ali kept his promise to me!" Thomas paused, struggling to continue. He was so proud, Mr. Kilroy. So proud that he knew the champion personally, that the champion had made him a promise and kept it. For those few minutes after the fight, Billy forgot about being sick. He forgot about the pain. He was just a little boy watching his hero win the biggest fight in the world. That night, Billy slipped away peacefully in his sleep. No struggle, no pain. Just peaceful. The last thing he said to me was, "Daddy, Ali won. That means I can win too." And then he closed his eyes and went to sleep forever. Thomas's voice broke completely now. "We put that photograph in his casket. The one where Mr. Ali is holding him. Along with a note that said, 'You're gonna beat cancer and I'm gonna beat George Foreman.' We both kept our promises, Mr. Kilroy. In different ways, we both kept our promises." When Kilroy found Ali and told him about Billy's passing, the newly crowned heavyweight champion of the world broke down completely. This man who had just achieved the impossible, who had shocked the world, and reclaimed his place as the greatest fighter alive, collapsed into a chair and sobbed like a child. "I did it for him," Ali cried, tears streaming down his face. "Every punch, every round, every moment in that ring, I did it for Billy. I wanted him to see that promises matter. I wanted him to see that if you believe in something enough, if you fight hard enough, you can make it happen." "He saw it, champ," Kilroy said quietly. "He watched you win. He was happy when he went to sleep." Ali shook his head, guilt washing over him. "But he didn't beat cancer. I kept my promise, but he couldn't keep his." "No," Kilroy said firmly. "You're wrong about that. Billy did beat cancer. Maybe not the way we wanted, maybe not the way we hoped, but he beat it. You know how?" Ali looked up through his tears. He didn't let it steal his hope. He didn't let it take away his joy. He got to watch his hero win the biggest fight in boxing history. He got to feel proud, feel connected to something bigger than his disease. And when he went to sleep, he went peacefully, knowing that promises can be kept, that people can overcome impossible odds, that there's still good in this world worth fighting for. Cancer took his body, champ. But it never got his spirit. You made sure of that. For the rest of his life, Muhammad Ali kept Billy's photograph on his bedroom wall. He never spoke about it publicly, it was too sacred, too personal. But people close to Ali knew the truth. The rumble in the jungle wasn't just about reclaiming a title. It was about keeping a promise to a dying child. At Ali's funeral in 2016, Billy's father, now an elderly man, brought something with him. The same faded Polaroid that had been buried with his son 42 years earlier. He'd had it exhumed and preserved for Ali's family. "Your father gave my son hope in his final days," he told Ali's children. "He made Billy feel like a champion. That's the real Muhammad Ali." Today, that photograph hangs in the Muhammad Ali Center in Louisville, Kentucky. Thousands of visitors see it every year. Most stop and stare, moved by something they can't quite name. It's the image of true greatness, not the trophy or the belt, but the promise kept to a dying child. Underneath the photo, Ali's family placed an inscription with the champion's most famous quote, "Service to others is the rent we pay for our time here on earth." Muhammad Ali understood something that transcends sports, transcends fame, transcends everything we think matters. He understood that being great doesn't mean being the strongest or the fastest or the most famous. Being great means using whatever strength you have to lift others up when they need it most. Billy didn't beat cancer. But he gave Ali something more powerful than any training regimen or strategy session. He gave Ali purpose. A reason to win that was bigger than ego or fame or money. He gave Ali the chance to prove that some promises are worth keeping, no matter the cost. And Ali gave Billy something equally precious. Hope, dignity. The gift of feeling important in his final days. the knowledge that someone as great as Muhammad Ali cared enough to make him a promise and fight like hell to keep it. That's what greatness looks like. Not the moment of victory, but the promise made in private. Not the championship belt, but the dying child who believes in you. Not the crowd cheering your name, but the quiet courage to carry someone else's hope into battle. Muhammad Ali was the greatest not just because he could float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. He was the greatest because when an 8-year-old boy needed a hero, Ali didn't just pose for a picture. He made a promise. And he kept it. If this story moved you, remember that we all have the power to make promises that give others strength. We all have the chance to be great in someone's eyes. We all can choose to use our time here on earth in service to others. That's the real lesson of Billy and Ali. Greatness isn't about what you achieve for yourself. It's about what you're willing to promise to someone who has nothing left but hope. And sometimes, keeping that promise changes everything.